Welcome to A Bevy of Bloods, a fan podcast to the Sydney Swans Football Club. My name's Noddy and I'm joined by Stevo. G'day, Stevo. How you going?
Yeah, mate, good. How you been?
Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. So this is episode 3, and we're going to be looking at the match review of round 1 against the Lions. We're going to have a quick chat about what's going on in the AFL in general, and then we're going to finish up with a round 2 preview. So without further ado, let's get stuck into it. Round 1 against the Lions in Brisbane, Stevo. First of all, what were your reactions to team selections?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. When I looked at the team lists on the Thursday when they came through, it was a bit of a shock. I think most Swans fans would have been surprised to see McLean named at fullback and young Melican not in the team. I don't think anyone actually expected McLean to play the whole game at fullback. But we've been talking just last week about how set our backline looked, and Melican was part of that. And then to not see him there, yeah, I was very shocked.
Definitely, me too. And we were chasing up to see what we could, if we could find any information on Melican, see if he was injured or if there was any personal stuff going on. But it looked like he was just completely dropped, and McLean was brought in. And we hadn't seen much of him in the preseason, obviously because he'd been playing in twos. But he ended up having a very good game, and so yeah, Warner and Wicks obviously we spoke about having brilliant games against the Giants in the Amy. So yeah, they obviously did their part to get selected. So yeah, all right. Well, let's look at the results. So 14-10 to 94, 19-11, 125 to the Swans. So a massive win. What are the takeaways here?
Oh, look, I mean, yeah, great win. 31 points, got out to 50 in the last quarter, which is, I mean, amazing. This is a team that, finished top 4 last year, one of the flag favourites for this year. And, they got a couple back late. They got 3 late goals that brought the margin back, well, by 50 points with 7-8 minutes to go up in Brisbane. So that was amazing, first of all. And I guess before we go on too, we should mention, before we get into the match breakdown a bit more, that it was really great to be able to sing the song for the first time for a Swans senior team win this year, but also that we've had some changes to the song, and the first Swans team to sing the new song actually with the new words was our under-19 girls a couple of weeks ago. Had a really good win down in Geelong against the Geelong Falcons. So what's the change? Remind me what we just talked about this.
Okay, yeah. So it was while her loyal sons are marching or go marching. I think it's are marching. And now it's while our loyal swans. So it's a more inclusive word selection, and I'm all for it. I don't mind. I think it's fine. To be honest, by that point of the night, if we're at the game and we watch this and the Swans get up for a win, I'm usually pretty 3 sheets to the wind. So it's usually a garbled mess anyway, garbled mess of joy and yeah, emotion. So I'm fine with it. I think it's good.
Yeah, me too. I think it's great, and like what I think is fantastic is we've got more Swans teams to barrack for now. I mean, we've got the under-19 girls team coming through the academy. We've got hopefully a senior team in the AFLW in a couple of years, fingers crossed. And, if we can sing the Swan song 3 times a week, you're laughing. So
Yeah, we are. We really are. Look, if we look at the quarter by quarter breakdown, it's sort of, for me, it paints a picture of the night. So obviously the Lions came storming, charging out of the blocks to get a goal a minute for the first 3 minutes. But that was basically, we stemmed that after that quick flurry, and it ended up being about 3 goals to 2 in the first quarter. The second quarter was just a very good competition. Teams basically even, so it was about ended up being 5 goals apiece to go in at equal points at halftime. As you were mentioning, pretty much over with, I think, 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, but that was on the back of a completely dominant third quarter where we scored 9 goals to 2. And then, of course, in the fourth quarter, Lions got 4 goals to our 2, but by then it was already over, and it was sort of a couple of consolation goals, a little bit like how they started the game. So that was sort of the story of the game quarter by quarter. But if we look at a couple of the stats from the game, Stevo, do you want to give us a couple of ideas there?
Yeah, and before I go into the stats, so I've just got a couple of general things I'll want to add about the game. I mean, I think we looked really fast and skillful, which I mean we haven't. I mean, like they were clinical the way that they played, like very very clean, and that's not something we usually have said about the Swans in the past. In our dominant years, we weren't really that sort of team. And so there's that, but then I think that a lot of football is mental. And if you think that we've got two teams of 22 blokes that are all professional athletes, they've all come through elite player pathways. They all know how to play football. They're all very good at it. So what makes it so that a team that finished bottom four can, in the second half, trounce a team that finished top four? And a lot of it's in the mind. If the Lions had turned up, switched on, and the Swans had gone up there, first game of the season, no one expects us to win. It's in Brisbane, it's hot, it's wet, whatever. They could have done us by 10 goals, no problem. And even Fagan said in his post-match interviews, he was saying, like, his words were the exact quote, tonight came as a bit of a surprise. And I think that they were. They were kind of shocked that the Swans really turned up to play.
Yeah, we absolutely did, and I think you've pointed out a couple of key stats that sort of showed that. And what were they again, Stevo?
Yeah, I mean the two for me that really stood out in terms of our dominance, particularly in that second half, was number one, uncontested possessions. We won uncontested possessions 209 to 155. So that's a lot difference. And uncontested possessions, I think that when we look at stats, everyone talks about contested possessions, you're winning in the coalface and that, but uncontested possessions is really in a footy game where you can start to dominate and take the game away from the opposition. And that's what the Swans did. They turned their contested possessions into uncontested possessions, and they were able to hurt Brisbane with how they moved the ball. And Fagan also mentions that in his post-match, he talks about that. And I often find after a win, it's interesting. I like to listen to the opposition coach because you can learn a lot about how we broke them down by what they identify as the problems in the game. And that was one that he really highlighted. And then the other one for me, 23 marks inside 50 to 5. And that's a team that's got Danaher, Hipwood, Charlie Cameron. Like, come on, 5 marks inside 50 against that sort of team is a very good defensive effort. And then 23 in our forward 50, when in the practice match 2 weeks ago, we were bemoaning that we didn't take a single one inside 50 for like the first half an hour of the game or something like that. It was like halfway through the second quarter when Parker took that one in the preseason game. So that was the other one for me that was really, really good.
Yeah, and we obviously did something right down there in the defensive 50. But as we said, McLean spent most of his time forward of the centre square. So really we had the two talls that were defending the 200 plus centimetre Danaher and Hipwood were, I guess, McCartan and Rampy, who was again playing tall as he can, really as a third tall. So yeah, obviously did a very good job. Very, very good job there to hold them to only 5 marks inside 50. But my main stats for the game, I'll look at just a couple of player focused one, and it's that sort of the thing that we keep talking about, all these young players. Now, there's a couple of definitions of young. There's like debutants, and then there's sort of third, fourth, fifth players that are entering the middle of their 20s. But names just in some categories, score involvements, we've got in the top 5 or 6: Rowbottom, Warner, Heaney, Mills, Gulden, Papley. In goal assist, we've got Heaney, Gulden, McLean, Papley, Warner. And then, of course, in disposals, we've got more of our key contributors like Mills, Lloyd, Parker, Hickey, who had a very good game, and I think we'll talk about that later on, and also Rowbottom, who had that knee hyperextension. So we'll have to watch how he pulls up in the week. But otherwise, time on ground, Rampy spent the most time on ground at 95%, and he just keeps soldiering on. McLean had 92%. Cunningham, Blakey, and Dawson rounded out. So we're starting to see that there's other players that are consistently assisting in how we perform, and was a main reason why we got up today. Other than that, to support that point, the age breakdown really was 65% of the 22 or 23, including Will Hayward as the medical sub, were 25 years or younger. So the breakdown of the 30 plus players, we had 17%. 26 to 29, we had 17%, 22 to 25, 39%, and 21 or younger, 26%. So you can start to see that the majority of our team are these younger players, or young and up and comers, as we'll call them, rather than the more established or senior players of the team. Other than that, I think we can move on to our favorite moments. What were your favorite moments, Stevo?
Okay. Yeah, I got a couple actually. They both involve Isaac Heaney. So two things that he did in the third quarter, and I think Heaney was a player that the Swans missed a lot last year. He only played, I think, 5 or 6 games, and he was having problems with injuries. Um, Having him back in full form this year is really good. Yeah, so in the third quarter, this was about halfway through the third quarter. I forget exactly where. There's a point where I think it's McCartan has the ball in the center square, pretty much. So pretty much right on the circle in the center. He kicks to Heaney, pretty much on the point of the square, like the corner of the square. Heaney, there's a bit of pressure. He drops the mark, regathers it really, really quickly, full pace, coming through, like running around the 50, fends off a player, gets himself balanced, and then spots up Logan McDonald coming out of the goal square on a lead on his left foot. Eyes low, doesn't blaze away, doesn't just try and have a ping from 50 or so. He sees that he's got a leading player and hits him. So that was number one. That was a really good example of what his explosive power can do, because the two things about Isaac Heating, I think, his explosiveness and then also his running capacity. So the second one is more about his running. About 5 minutes after that, in the third quarter still, there's a throw in the Swans left back pocket down the back. Heaney is positioned on the defensive side of the wing for the throw-in, like as that sort of half forward, play, like kick out option if we win the ball. Swans win the clearance, long kick comes out, Heaney goes up, contests the ball in the air, doesn't win the mark, but the ball comes to ground. Gulden roves the ball on the ground. Gulden's kind of stuck on the boundary line. I guess he didn't have anything in board that he could hit, so he kicks long down the boundary to Gulden. And I think to Sam Reed was at the contest, I think. And then Heaney is tracking up. So Heaney is there. So he's there already at that contest, having contested one ball. He's the next one ready to be an option if necessary. He's there. Papley wins the crumb, looks inside, hits up a good kick, like a very aggressive kick into the corridor. This entire time, Heaney continues to run down the boundary line, and then the Swans transition the ball that side, and it comes back in, and he takes the mark and kicks the goal. But what I like about that is that he contested the ball on halfback, runs all the way down, doesn't get used. A lot of players, once they get to their second contest, they might run out a bit of tank. They might start to think, okay, I'm probably not going to get a kick here. I'm not going to keep busting my gut to get forward. So they might either get drawn back in to the corridor where the players, like they might follow the ball in. They might just stop, and think, okay, we're going to score that way. I'm just going to chill out here. They don't need me. Or they might push forward a bit, but only get to around like a shallow position, like around the 50 kind of area. He doesn't. He runs all the way hard down the line to be deep in the forward line and a strong marking option. Takes the mark, like a strong mark with physical pressure, and yeah, goal. And that to me just shows how much of a running beast that guy is and how much we need him.
Isaac Heaney, a quick shout out to my Swans group of boys that go to the footy. I was watching some post-match clip of Isaac Heaney being interviewed. I can't remember what season it was. It was definitely 2017 or 2018. But he was obviously asked, how do you think the game went? And he just kept saying, oh, the boys, we really just brought the heat this week. We're just really focused and we brought the heat, and we really piled it on and we brought the heat. And so I'm watching this going, this guy really likes the words, the heat. And I'm like, that works really well with Isaac Heaney. So my group call him Isaac Heat, or the Heat Heaney. So every time Heaney touches the ball, we all scream Heat. But that's just something that's totally peculiar to us as the rabble of the O'Reilly stand. But anyway, he had a blinder. Yeah. My favourite moments, and obviously we have to have a couple of quick moments here talking about the sensational debuts of Logan McDonald, Errol Gulden, and Braden Campbell. First of all, how fantastic that they all debuted together, and they were obviously told that during the week with that little clip that they put out on the Swans app, where they took them down to the SCG and they named them all as playing. So fantastic moment, obviously, for Errol and Braden that have grown up together. But likewise, Logan, who I think have developed a good friendship with the other two Sydney boys, because they're obviously in the same draft class. But they debuted together. How wonderful! And who would know? Who would have thought that they went on to have the game that they all had? But 3.5 minutes into the first quarter, their first respective touches in AFL football were to each other. So Campbell kicks down the line out of the defensive 50 to Gulden. Gulden catches up on the wing, cuts slightly inwards and delivers a beautiful lace out kick to McDonald. And then McDonald kicks further down to a marking contest between Heaney and Reid, and they sort of don't communicate, and Reid smashes this back in the behind post. But just what a brilliant way to start their AFL careers with each other. It was like, did they plan this? But it was fantastic. At the same time, on the flip side of that, with 2.5 minutes or about 3 minutes left in the first quarter, there was a little bit of an interaction that I thought was quite telling and interesting to watch. McDulden, I've morphed them together. McDonald was tearing out of the inside 50, running hard up into the high wing, and had a player on him. And then Gulden was coming the other way, and I think someone had obviously kicked it out of the defensive 50, and they hadn't really communicated. And I think what McDonald wanted was Gulden to sort of run a bit of a block, so that he could obviously take the mark, but that didn't come to pass anyway. It got spoiled and then went up for a boundary throw in. But you saw the two first gamers have a bit of a quick moment with each other, where Gulden was like, McDonald was like, "Why didn't you do this?" And Gulden was like, "Oh mate, I was going for the ball." And so they were sort of having a bit of a go at each other. And I was looking at this going, wow, two first gamers. It just shows you how competitive these guys are, and how hopefully how great they're going to be in the long run. So that was really cool to see. Obviously, they kicked 3 goals in their debut, which is like fantastic. I was really hoping that Campbell could kick one, and in fact, he actually did kick a goal, but it was brought back because he ran through the protected zone, and that was a damn shame, because I think Papley kicked a goal and Hewitt missed towards the end of the game as well. But that would have been great to honour those milestone men in that way. But it didn't matter because of the win in general. My last favourite moment, very quickly, Ollie Florent, who's obviously starting on the wing, had a fantastic game. Wasn't too, he didn't have the limelight or anything, but he played very well across the board. And when we looked at his time spent in the forward half as opposed to defensive half, he actually played an overwhelming amount in the defensive half, so 74%. So he had taken it upon himself to be that player, to be that extra support player in defense, run hard and get back. And it really showed. There was one passage of play, I think in the third quarter, with about 6.5 minutes to go, where Florent, I think it was either a ball up or a throw in, but basically Florent collects it, handballs to Rampy, handballs to Florent again, so a quick 1-2. He then kicks to Reid further down the line, who makes a contest of it. Gulden picks up the scraps. He kicks inboard to Papley, who kicks again to Mills, who was just fantastic, but we'll talk about him later. Handballs again to Florent, who's still gut running through, who kicks lace out to Heaney, charging out of the forward 50, and then Heaney goes back and kicks a goal. So the heat. But yeah, that was all on Florent. He had 3 critical touches in this link, and he worked hard from back 50 basically to the forward 50. So it just shows that another one of these high draft picks from a couple of years ago is really coming good. So yeah, fantastic. Anything else for the match, Stevo? Or
no, I think that was that was a fair bit. So sounds good.
Let's get on to best on ground. We're going to do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, a bevy of bloods best on ground trophy. The highly coveted, never heard of, a bevy of bloods best on ground. So do you want to explain it a little bit more? I think it's kind of like what the coaches do anyway.
Yeah, I guess every footy club and has their best and fairest awards, and you got the Brownlow and all the various media outlets have their awards. So we thought, why shouldn't Bevy of Bloods have a best player? So each week, the two of us, we're each going to give our own personal 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, just like the Brownlow. 5 is your best player, 4, etc. We're going to list it order opposite though, but we'll start with our fifth, with our best player and go backwards, I think. But yeah, and then we're going to tally up the votes, and then at the end of the year, we'll have the inaugural winner of the yet to be named Bevy of Bloods best and fairest, or whatever so maybe the winner of that, maybe the inaugural winner can become the name. Maybe that can be the prize. They get it named after them for the next year.
Wow, that would be quite an honor, I think. It's something to talk about in the locker rooms. All right, so Stevo, what you do? You just give me your 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in one go, and then I'll give you mine.
Okay, yeah, and then we can go through who was good and why. I've got 5 votes Mills, 4 votes to Rampy, 3 votes to Hickey, 2 votes to Gulden, and 1 vote to Heaney.
Fantastic. All right, I've got 5 to Mills, 4 to Gulden, 3 to Parker, 2 to Hickey, and 1 to McDonald. So
Yeah, nice.
the overlap we had there was Mills at 5. Okay, so let's start with Mills. We both agree that he was best on ground.
Yep, great game.
He was unreal. Yeah, just 29 disposals. I think you said 21 of them were uncontested. Am I getting that right?
I think so. Yeah, he really played that link role through the midfield very, very well.
Yeah, he was just everywhere. He's obviously he's been earmarked for a while to get back into the midfield. He's too good a player to have left out of the team. So in the first 4 or 5 years of his career, he's been playing as a lockdown back, and then switches into the midfield and dishes up that really as his first official role in the midfield. Wow, goes forward and kicks 2 goals.
Yeah.
So how handy. I think the other players there we had obviously Gulden, and we've touched about. We just like the vibe of this kid, don't we?
Yep, definitely. I mean, that's his first game of footy, this guy, and he looked like he'd been doing it for years, didn't he? I've actually heard. I think I was talking to my brother about Gulden at one point, and he listens to a lot of footy podcasts and stuff, and follows a lot of footy news. And he was saying that someone had said, one of the recruiters I think had said that Gulden, every time he's stepped up a level in football, he's made the transition very easily, because he's got a very no frills, quite flawless game style. So there's not much wrong with his game. So when he lifts from like underage footy to local senior footy or whatever, and then up to AFL, or it doesn't matter. He makes the step very clean.
Yeah, and I think there was a little bit of conversation before the actual national draft that had he not been a Swans Academy player, and coupled with the fact that he's like fairly short for a professional player these days, 172 centimeters, nothing wrong with that. But right, Stevo?
Yeah, no, plenty of good small players played footy.
That's right. But that's one of the main reasons that he slid down to 32, even though he was bid on by the Cats. But, with a game like that, I think a lot of people are going to be looking and saying maybe we should have had a crack at him. But it probably wouldn't have mattered because the Swans would have matched, but it would have affected the way in which we were able to match, because we may have taken a points deficit into the following year. But anyway, that's a totally separate topic. So, yeah, 3 goals on debut. Oh, Errol. Quick shout out to that song that's now our clip every time he touches the ball.
Yeah, Australian Crawl is going to get a lot of Spotify hits from Swans fans in the next few weeks, I think.
And we're not going to. Are we going to do a little bit of a? I mean, it's the one that goes, "Oh, Errol."
You would. How is it? I would give. I can't remember. I listened to it like 30 times this week. It's "Oh Errol, I would give anything just to be like him," I think is the lyric. And then the video clip is amazing. If listeners, if you haven't seen it, go onto YouTube. It's this popular dude. He's surfing. He's meeting all of these, like luxurious, glamorous people. He's in the sauna with all of these beauties and stuff. And and that's Errol. Everyone wants to be like Errol.
And that was definitely Errol Gulden after his first the game against the Lions the other day. But okay. So the other player we had together was Hickey. Now I've made it known that my position on Hickey and the way in which he came into the club, with a Lear out, and did we get enough points, and were there other rucks we could have gone for? I was a little bit skeptical, but he had a fantastic game. It was basically like another midfielder, wasn't he, for us?
Yeah, I mean, if you think of what the role of a ruckman is in modern footy, the first thing that you want the ruck to do is to control a tap at the centre bounce and around the ground, in the stoppages and the ball ups and throw-ins. So that's number one. You want them to control a tap. If they can't do that, you want them to at least obstruct the tap of the other ruckman. That's like number 2. And then once the ball comes to ground level, you want them to impact the clearance at the ground level. So that's number 3. And then finally impact around the ground. So in this game against the Lions on the weekend, the ruck was pretty neutral. So the clearances became a bit of a scrap, like a midfield contested ball fight on the ground. And he was the biggest dog in the fight. He got 23 disposals, 9 clearances. The Swans had 30 clearances, and 9 of them were to Hickey alone. I mean, that's a dominant performance by any midfield player, let alone a ruckman.
Yeah. And it actually showed. I'll do a quick recap of the AFL fantasy points later on. But the other play, so you had Rampy, and I had Parker. So that was just a divergence of opinions there. And then you had Heaney, obviously you've spoken about. The heat was brilliant. And then I had McDonald, who had the 3 goals on debut. So I think that was the main variance there.
Yeah. And just on Parker, I'm not on Parker, sorry, just on Rampy. I think often we sort of, because the Swans backline is such a tight unit, the way that they play, I think we just expect them to do the job every week. And we don't really think, oh, he had an awesome game, because we just, that's what our backline does. And especially someone like Dane Rampy. But if you look at his impact on the game, he was number 1 for the Swans for intercepts. Actually, I think he was number 1 in the game for intercepts. And number 1 for meters gained, I think, for the Swans, and maybe for the game as well. I can't remember. So number 1 in intercepts and meters gained, 22 disposals, and he played a very strong defensive role on a bloke who was 10 centimeters and 10 kilos bigger than him. So that to me is a fantastic effort. I really liked his game. I mean, he's always good, but yeah.
Yeah, he played very well, and it was a bit stiff to not get in the Noddy best on ground. But you've got to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah,
I've got a soft spot for Luke Parker, and I always have, and I probably always will. So he's going to be there in the mix, I think, for me. But
he had a good
try
game.
Not to let he was just Mr. Dependable. But if we actually look at our top 5 players. What have I got? I've got top six players in our AFL fantasy, and again, we'll put up a couple of pictures of our the screenshots of the actual results from the app. 121 fantasy points to Mills, 108 to Gulden, so it's just unbelievable value for coaches who picked him. 97 for Parker, 92 for Hickey, and that was a very good value because I think he started off for about 414,000. So well done to those who picked him. Rowbottom, 89, who only had 62% time on ground, obviously with that horrific or pretty grimacing looking knee injury, but luckily came back on. So hopefully he's good to play next week. But yeah, it just shows he had a very good game in a fantasy sense, racking up disposals. And then George Hewitt, 83, to round out the top. I just wanted to add Hewitt there. Well, I'll keep it to 5 going forward, but just wanted to throw in Hewitt there for his 100th game. So showed that he actually had a very good game as well.
Yeah, he did. I thought he slotted back. I mean, he missed a lot of footy, and then he just slotted straight back in like nothing had happened. I thought he did really well.
Oh, he's unreal. He's just one of those players that you can. I'm sure Horse can just throw his magnet on the board and know that he's going to do whatever he's been told to do. And he's just, obviously it was a tough year for him last year with the back. And congratulations though with the birth of their baby boy. So, and with 100 games now for the Swans, we've got a future father-son, so that's pretty cool.
Yes. I didn't think of that.
We'll tick that one off. Yep, good work.
When does Buddy, is Buddy's kid going to be Buddy just had a kid too, right? And I think it's going to be a fight between Hawthorn and the Swans. I think the kid can go either way.
Yes, because he's definitely played more than he played 180 or so for the Hawks, and he's played 100 and something now for the Swans. So let's hope that he comes he goes with the Bloods. But he's also got a Tallulah, his firstborn daughter, so she might have a crack at the AFLW team for the Swans if we can get that up and running, which I think we are. And then, so you and I were talking, like, I don't know if the name has been announced yet. I haven't. Have you seen anything overnight, Steve?
No, and I've got Buddy Franklin on Instagram, but there's been nothing. So
yeah, I think they're probably holding it for a bit. Maybe they're still deciding because I think it's brand new. But you and I were like, hey, let's have a little bit of a guess. Let's figure out what this son of a modern legend is going to be called. So off the bat, what did you say?
I can't remember now. What did I say?
You said Errol. You said
Errol. Errol.
Going to call him Errol after Errol Gulden. And I'm like, wow, that would be quite a tip of the hat, wouldn't it? But I said something purely epic and like sort of almost like epic poem or like mythical, like Gilgamesh.
Yeah, they're like biblical names or something, weren't they?
Yeah, like Ajax or not like a cleaning product, like the Greek war hero, or Achilles. But you don't want to obviously give him a bit of an Achilles heel name.
That's dangerous, isn't it, for a footy player? You don't want to be the kid called Achilles.
Achilles, yeah, something madness, big and epic like that. But I don't know. Maybe we can throw the question out on one of our social media pages and see if anyone is listening and anyone has an opinion on this. And we'll have to act quickly because I'm sure they'll announce soon.
On our Instagram, a bevy of bloods on Facebook and Instagram. We can speculate as to the name of the Franklin child.
Yeah, and that'll be our excitement for the rest of the week tonight until the team is announced. But before we go into the round 2 preview, let's just have a quick chat about what is going on in the AFL, what went on. So specifically the impact of the rule changes. So just give us a quick recap of how you see it, Stevo.
Okay, I mean, I think there are two main ones that we'll talk quickly about: the medical sub, and then also the stand the mark rule. They're the ones that have been getting the most media attention throughout the weekend and then into the week. The sub with the medical sub, my feeling on this is that I like the thinking behind it. Like I think that it's important to protect players from head injury. That's obvious. I mean, that goes without saying. But I think that the way they developed the whole thing was quite rushed, ill-conceived. It was all thrown out like the day before the season started. They could have taken some time and gone through some process on it. I also question the whole idea of the medical sub being a concussion or player health issue, because I mean, under the existing rules, they have very strong concussion protocols anyway. So it's not like concussed players are being pushed to play football. They're getting taken off. They're getting really, really thoroughly assessed. And if they can't play, they do not go back on the field. This isn't the 90s or this isn't the times like I remember when I was younger growing up. You came off the field with a hit on the head and they'd say, can you count backwards from 5 or how many fingers, and off you go back on the field. That does not happen anymore. So we're not seeing concussed players on the field. The doctors are making sure of that. And so then what it's really about then, it's about preserving a 22 versus 22 contest throughout the match. And then we need to ask questions about how important this is in the nature of our sport. Is that something that we really want to prioritize? And then if that is what we want a 22 v 22 contest, then, why only one sub? Why not 2 or 3 or enough to make sure we can always have that full bench no matter what? And yeah, I just think it's too much pressure on doctors to make these decisions and to have the ethics called into question if an injured player, because an injured player with a physical injury, not a concussion, has to come off. Then the doctor assesses the severity of the injury. If they think it's serious enough that they'll probably miss 12 days, then they can be subbed out. But then if they recover quicker, they can play again. And so by doing that, they're putting so much pressure on these doctors. And I don't think that they need to. They could just make it 12 days for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully by the end of the season, there's no additional scrutiny on these club doctors. They obviously have a pretty tough gig anyway, making sure that there's a fully fit list of all these the AFL clubs. But yeah, hopefully it doesn't come back on them. But yeah, as you say, if it is about preserving a 22 on 22 contest, then yeah, just if anyone legitimately goes, and we all know the injuries where players aren't coming back on, it's either those horrific head clashes or like otherwise knees or arms or shoulders, then we've got lists of, I think, well, we're up to 42 or 43. We've got enough players and enough good fringe players who are putting their hand up to just be sick. We've got the emergencies. So why not just have them there and then they can jump on if there's an injured player, and to keep it at 22 always. Like, I think in soccer, don't they have basically the squad of 22? There's 11 on the field, and they can choose from any other 11 players to go on. Now, I know that they're probably capped. They may have capped
they do. It's
substitutions.
3. They can have 3 maximum. Yeah.
So it's very different in that sense. But the idea that you've got a list to choose from, if a player goes down legitimately, put them on, and then deal with concussions separately as they are. But anyway, we'll see how it goes for the rest of the year. Stand the mark, Stevo.
The stand the mark. I mean, everyone's talking about this, and I think that a lot of commentators and the AFL, people in the football industry generally, I think they're very quick to, I think, perhaps overstress the impact of this rule. I like the rule. I think it's positive. I like what they're trying to achieve, and I also think that it's effective. And we've clearly seen that in some cases it's very effective in the way that players can move the ball. But what I don't think that we can say this rule has caused this change. I think that there's actually what's really important with any rule is that you need coaching mentality, coaching philosophy to change. And we've actually been seeing that for the past several years. If you look at like the Brisbane team for the last few years, Port, West Coast, these are sides that are playing a very sort of, fast attacking, fast ball movement style of football. So that actually has been developing. And I think what this rule has done, which is really good, is that it's made it that little bit more attractive for these teams who want to play this style, because you can still make a game an ugly slog. I mean, look what the Pies Bulldogs game was on Friday night. That wasn't a great game of footy. There was a lot of static ball moving up and down the boundary. They're playing by the same rules. It's just that, they weren't maximising them. But teams who want to play that way, I think, can get a lot from it.
It was an absolute score fest in an AFL fantasy sense. I think there were like 6 or 7 Bulldogs players that got 100 points or more. So it was good in that regard, but it was terrible to watch. But yeah, look, me too. I think it's good. The only other thing is when there's a player going for goal and the player standing the mark can't move. So it basically has as we saw a couple of times, they use that running off their line to kick the goal. And so I think you were saying if we could remove it for in those, or possibly think about removing it in that scenario, that might level things out. But
yeah, I think so, because the way that I see it with that is that the purpose of that rule is to mean that players can move the ball quickly and they can take more of these angled kicks that otherwise would be covered. So they can take these sort of diagonal kicks and kicks to more attacking positions rather than having to kick over the man on the mark. But when you're taking a shot for goal, you've already moved the ball to an attacking opportunity, to a scoring opportunity. So you shouldn't really still need that. And I think in these situations where you get a set shot for goal, where they give you your 30-second clock, that rule, to take your shot, they could say that, on those situations, if they've hit the 30-second clock, then the player on the mark can move, because I think that by not letting them move in those situations, you're making it too easy to kick goals from like around the 50. And that's sort of swinging the balance a bit too far back towards the attack, because it's like anything. It's like cricket. You want a good game between bat and ball. You don't want 400 runs in a day every day of a cricket match, nor do you want one team dominating because the game is based on attacking. You want a balance, and I think they can tweak it a bit more to get the balance.
Yeah, so maybe they just release that rule once it's once the shot clock comes on or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, kick-ins, I think that's helping as well. Exiting with big long kicks out of the goal square. I just had a quick question for you. We couldn't really answer this the other day, so maybe we'll throw it out to the listeners. But I would have thought that stand the mark rule applies to the player who's standing the mark on the mark from kick-ins, but to me, the way I view it, it looks like they're able to move laterally and the umpire's right there, so it must be okay. Otherwise, you'd be saying something. So maybe it doesn't apply for kick-ins, but it just was confusing to me that they were so steadfast on stand the mark throughout the rest of the field. But when kick-ins occurred, it looked like players could, and this is before they've elected to play on, stepped out of the goal square and played on. It very clearly multiple times throughout the game, and not just the Lions, but the Swans and other players in other teams as well. They're clearly moving left and right. So perhaps it doesn't apply, but I don't know. Maybe we can look more into that as homework this week and chat about it next week. But otherwise, interchange cap, no huge effect, right?
I don't think. I mean, both teams have it. So I think that a lot of this discussion around the interchange cap and criticisms of it, I mean, at the end of the day, both teams have the same cap. So
yeah, it's an equity thing. It should be balanced there. So it is what it is, I guess, mate. So, all right. Well, if that's all we've got to say about the AFL in general, and obviously there's a lot of other things going on, but we've just decided to limit it to the impact of the rule changes, we will move on to round 2 preview. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to look at each match one by one and give our tips for that. And we're going to divvy the list up. I'll do the first half and you do the second half. But the Swans Crows game is in that first half. So we'll spend a little bit more time together talking about that, and we'll look at our ins and outs. And of course, obviously pick a winner there. So with that in mind, I'll kick off round 2 for season 2021 with the Blues against the Pies at the MCG. And I'm going to go with the Blues here, mate. I don't know. I just feel like they weren't too far away from the Tigers. But yeah, the Pies were quite droll the other night. So unless they make a lot of changes in their strategy and even team selection, I think it's going to be, I think the Blues are going to pip them. What do you think, mate?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I watched both of those teams play last week, and I was much more excited by what I saw from the Blues versus Richmond than what Collingwood dished up against the Dogs. I mean, both teams lost, but I was more into the Blues, the way that they were playing. So I'm going Blues.
Yeah, fair call. And obviously Zach Williams comes back into the team after his one game suspension. So he's going to add a ton more effort. And I actually just really like Zach Williams. I think it was a bit of a shame that we couldn't get him. Well, not that we're after him, but he's, as a New South Wales boy, I think it would have been cool to see him in the red and white. But yeah, good on him to get the contract down there at the Blues, and I think he's seriously going to add firepower to them. So yeah, all right, Noddy Blues, Stevo Blues. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay,
Blues.
just make a note of that. Okay, next game is Cats and Lions in Geelong. GMHBA, that mouthful of a stadium. So at Cardinia Park. The two teams that had shock losses in round one will be out to seek revenge against each other. Obviously, Paddy Dangerfield is out with a 3-match ban with that massive head bump, or head clash rather, on Brown of the Crows. Hopefully he's okay, recovering well, but that's a very big out. Obviously, Jeremy Cameron, their prize recruit, he's still out with a hamstring. And I think Menegola is 50-50. So obviously gives a good chance for some young midfielders in the vein of Parfitt, who was with Jordan Clark and Charlie Constable, who I really like, to step up. And obviously Hawkins can kick goals. We know that. So the Lions are ginger from last week, and rightly so, up the Bloods. But I don't know. I'm starting to think maybe the Cats at home, that's going to be too strong, even for a rebounding Lions. How about you, mate?
Yeah, I was thinking about this one a bit because Brisbane, I've got a lot of respect for Fagan as a coach. I mean, after Longmire, he's my favourite coach in the AFL by a good stretch. I think that I like to follow, and I don't think that he'll let his team be that down and flat like they were in the second half 2 weeks in a row. Having said that, I'm not sure if it's going to be enough to beat even a depleted Geelong. So I'm going to say Cats too.
Yeah. Okay. Noddy Cats, Stevo Cats. All right. That brings us on to the game of the round in our eyes, as a bevy of Bloods, and that is Swannies versus Crows at the SCG, 1:45 p.m. First bounce. Cannot wait. Going to the footy, obviously. Super stoked. How do we see this one, Stevo?
I think anything could happen, really. Both teams have come off really, really strong, unexpected wins. I watched the Crows game as well over the weekend. In Finland, we're on pretty much close to a pandemic lockdown at the moment, so there's a lot of time to watch footy. So I've been catching up on all the games, and the AFL Live Pass has been a godsend for the pandemic period, for us abroad for the footy, the Swans were brilliant against Brisbane, but they could just as easily. They're a young, developing team still. And I think we need to remember that we had a fantastic win. But, they are going to come and go, imagine. Maybe we win 22 games in the flag, who knows? But realistically, I think, they're going to have better days. I think they'll be fired up, though. I think that the first home game for a lot of those young guys is going to be a big buzz, especially the two who grew up, within a reasonable drive of the SCG. And I think that I think the Swans are going to win.
Yeah, look, the Crows played very well. They're obviously a young list as well. They're coached by an ex-Swan, Matty Nix there. So I think they're going to be a threat. And, they've got some very good young players coming through. Like, I particularly like the look of Lockie Scholl. Obviously, Jordan Butts, who's going to be a stalwart down back for them. Who else? Harry Schoenberg, Ned McHenry, all these young guys that are coming through and just playing roles. Obviously, one game is a bit hard to go by, but they finished last year quite strongly. I think they won 3 of their last 4 games, so they're bringing some form through. So I think it's going to be a harder game than maybe people think. I think we get a bit bullish after a win like that up in Brisbane, but yeah, look, obviously Buddy's been announced by this stage to play. He's fit. His beautiful baby boy, I'm assuming, has been born. Gilgamesh or Errol, we're not name pending. But so he's been he's been announced as playing. So we assume, unfortunately, Hayden McLean will drop out, which is obviously a shame because he had a very good game in his own right. But when it's Buddy, you've just got to make way for the game's a modern game's greatest goal kicker. And then I think that's probably it. Only Rowbottom is the only, watch and see see how his knee pulls up. So if in the event Rowbottom is named out, because I think he's had some bone bruising, which is pretty tough. I think that happened to Ronk at some point, either last year or the year before. So needed a couple of weeks out. So if Rowe is out, who's in?
I mean, as supporters, we only see what the coaches put out for us, really, and we're not seeing how they train. We don't see how they go in scratch matches and stuff. So all we can base it on is what we get. So I mean, I'd have to look at the emergency list from last week. So it's got to be someone who was emergency.
I think that was Stevens.
Yeah, I think Stevens.
Hayward, Stevens, Bell, and Ling or something, wasn't it?
I mean,
Ling
maybe
or Sinclair. It was
if it's like for like, I don't know. If it's like for like, maybe you do put Bell in. I mean, he's like a strong ball-winning type midfield player. Maybe he goes in. Maybe they bring in Stevens and move some roles around. Maybe Hayward. I reckon all three of those, really. Sinclair, I would think.
Yeah.
Not.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to shout out Riley Thilthorpe. So the Crows' top pick. He's a tall. I don't know if he's going to play this week, but it depends on how tall they go. So if they do go tall, they do have a few talls throughout. They got Frampton, Tex Walker, obviously Riley O'Brien, and then a couple of other talls throughout. We have, I think, 3 or I guess 4 now with Buddy coming in. So you wouldn't do something like if Rowi's out, you'd keep McLean and then add Buddy. That'd probably be a little bit too tall, don't you think?
Yeah, probably. I mean, if we assume that they're going to keep the same structure they played against the Lions, then yeah, probably not. But maybe they play Buddy on a wing. I don't know. Maybe he's not going to play it full forward. Who knows what they do with him? I mean,
he can sort of do whatever he wants, I guess.
Yeah, you probably just have a
license to kill from wherever he wants to be. But look. So depending on the structure they go with, obviously Buddy's in. Probably McLean's out. Rowi's pending. If his knee doesn't pull up, we think maybe Stevens or Bell if they want like for like.
Yeah, honestly, any of those 3 smalls. But if I had to pick one, I'd say Stevens.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Hayward was medical sub last week, but I think we're covered for that type of role that he plays. So he might not get in if Rowie comes out. But let's just wait and see. I think they'll, if we're playing on Saturday, they'll announce tonight. Or no, tomorrow, sorry. They announce 24 hours in advance these days, which is frustrating for fantasy coaches, but I'll complain about that later on. Okay, so who are we picking, Stevo?
I'm going to pick the bevy, and I've realised that because we have the bevy is the collective noun for a group of swans, as we've mentioned before. That's why our podcast is called A Bevy of Bloods, because it's a bevy of swans. And I realised last week we played against a pride of lions, and the bevy beat the pride, and this week the bevy is playing against a murder of crows. So it's the bevy versus the murder, and I'm on the bevy.
I'm hoping that the bevy murders the murder.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going for the Swans as well, mate. That's a fait accompli for me. So, all right, we've got Noddy Swans, Stevo Swans. Yep. All right. Yep. Next game is Port Adelaide versus Essendon at Adelaide Oval. I'm just going to go this real simple, not overthink it. Port Adelaide.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, all right, 2 Ports there. Only thing I will mention there, obviously, Orazio Fantasia is playing against his old club, Essendon. He had a cracker in the first round. I think he kicked 4 goals, 4 behind, so was very much up and about. Port are just looking the goods. Obviously, they've got a leer from the Swans last year, but yeah, I think this is going to be. It should be probably a monstering, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
All right, next. Oh, sorry, Stevo.
No, just agreeing with you. Yeah, I think Port will win comfortably in Adelaide.
Yeah. All right, next game is Saints versus the Demons. And I've got this listed as Marvel. I'll just double check that that's actually where they're playing.
Yeah, I've got
Marvel.
So, yeah.
You got Marvel? Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I think the Saints are probably going to get up here. I've jumped ahead to the tip. But that's off the back of a very good win against the Giants last week. Excuse me, I had a bit of a cough there. And although they've got a couple of tall options out, I think Paddy Ryder's still on personal leave and Rowan Marshall is still out with a bit of a foot. I think they've probably got enough. Oh, Max King comes back after his golf ball concussion. What a freak accident. But I think that with their midfield and their absolute buffet of small, dangerous forwards in the vein of Butler, Lonnie, Gresham, Higgins. I wonder if I'm missing Billings, I think they've got like 17 players who are named Jack, so it's hard to keep track of who's who. But yeah, I just think the Saints will probably edge out the D's. How are you seeing it, mate?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I like the way St Kilda play, and also purely sentimentally, there's three ex Swans on the list down there with Tim Membre, and it's really good to see. I mean, a guy who he struggled to establish himself with the Swans and eventually got traded back to Melbourne. And he's really developed and matured and thrived down there as a footy player, which is really nice to see. Like a bloke who couldn't get a game and get set in one place, really make something of himself in a different environment. So yeah, so Membre, and then I think he's their vice captain even, or he's one of their senior players now, like leadership type players. And then Membre, and then yeah, I mean Dan Hanbury, Swans premiership player, and Zach Jones, Swans gun midfielder. Zach Jones, which Jones? Which Jones?
Yeah,
no.
Zach. Yeah, Zach.
Yeah, his brother's at Melbourne. Yeah, so it's actually the brothers, but he's probably not going to play. He's injured, but anyway.
Well, he might. No. I think Zach is back in the frame. So I think he's recovered. I think he had a VFL game last week. So he may be selected. But one of the boys at the Swans group had such a man crush on Zach. He'd call him Zach Attack. And I think he legitimately cried when he left the Swans. So no worries, Chriso. We'll find your favourite player this year.
Yeah, it's a shame
the other thing I'll say, yeah, it is. Membrey has just inked a 3-year extension. So he's only 26. I didn't realize I thought he was older than that, but he will basically, you would imagine, finish his career at the Saints. And obviously Saints, they're red, white and black. So they're pretty close to the Swans anyway in a colour sense. So yeah, all right. Noddy Saints, Stevo Saints.
Did I say? Yeah, I did say Saints. And I should also say, while tipping the Saints, I want to say hi to Alex, one of our players from the finish for the Dockers in Finland, the Turku Dockers. He's a big Saints fan. So I hope they get the win for him.
Have them marching in. All right, Steve, I think I'll throw over to you for the last 4 games of the round here.
Okay, I'll punch through these ones because they're not really as interesting as the ones that you mentioned, to be honest. Well, actually, no, there's Dogs versus West Coast. But anyway, Suns versus North Melbourne. Look, I saw the Suns play against West Coast. They did pretty well. I can't see North beating them. Yeah, I'm Suns. I don't really have much to say about that one. Poor Raul.
Yeah,
Raul. Feel bad for him with his injury, but hopefully he gets better soon.
Yeah, that's the story there, isn't it? Unbelievable bad luck for him, and also for the 51% of fantasy coaches that owned him. But obviously, it's more important that his health is priority and his recovery, mental and everything is okay. But what a shame, because we all know what he can do. But yeah, hopefully he rebounds quickly. Yeah, I'm tipping the Suns here, mate, in Gold Coast.
Yeah. Okay, so Hawks Tigers at the MCG. The Tigers are listed as the away team for this one, which must be it's going to be a tough away trip for them. They probably have to use
a couple of 100 meters from Punt Road, isn't it?
I think so, and they may even have to use. Do they have like the old-fashioned home and away change rooms? The MCG, does each tenant club have its own rooms these days? I don't know, but they might have to be in different rooms.
The Tigers have built their own wing. I think it's called the Dynasty Wing.
Yeah.
Anyway, here I go again.
The Tigers are going to win this. I have little to say about this that's not going to end up in us bashing Richmond. So I'm just going to say Tigers.
Yeah, I think the Tigers will cruise past the Hawks. I just quick shout out. Will Day was their high draft pick last year. I really like the look of him. I've got him in a couple of. I've got him in my non-A bevy of Bloods fantasy team, and I don't think that he's going to be enough to sway the outcome. But yeah, just want to have a quick shout out to him.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, I think that's we both agree Tigers, right?
Yep, Tigers.
Yeah. Okay. Next one, Dogs versus West Coast in Marvel. I think Docklands is where I've got that written down. It's going to happen. This is a tough one because they both had good wins. Different types of wins. The Dogs win was much more of a grind, I think, and then the West Coast. I mean, they broke Gold Coast open a bit later in the game, but it was a also interesting game. Dogs, I mean, they've got some real talent through that midfield, don't they? I think that the Dogs in Melbourne to win for me.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. This is probably the hardest game of the round for me to call, but I think the Dogs at Marvel. I wish Bevo would play Jamara, but I'm not sure if he's going to this week. But either way, I think the Dogs midfield is just going to do a bit of a number on the depleted Eagles midfield. So I think, was it Shuey and Yo out, or Shuey pending, Yo definitely still out. But obviously that leaves Sheed and Kelly to fill the void. But not that they can't, but I just think the Dogs Yeah, so long as they can kick goals with Norton and Bruce up there, with Jamara still in the wings. But yeah, Dogs, I think.
Yeah, okay, so we agree on that one too. I think we've agreed on every tip so far.
I
Maybe
think
we should.
this is quite a
Oh,
boring,
yeah,
boring
but
little.
this last one could go both ways. Let's see. Dockers
Oh, yeah.
versus the Giants. Dockers in Perth. Dockers versus GWS.
I'm going GWS here, mate.
Okay, well, I'm going to tip the Dockers just so we don't all have the same tips.
Okay, fair play.
Because it's in Perth, and the team that I have here in Finland is the Dockers. So even though we don't wear purple and white or whatever it is, but still, Dockers.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I love it when the Giants lose because the AFL have thrust this local derby nonsense on us. But I just think they almost beat the Saints last week, and the Saints are probably a top 8 team, and Freo, I think, are on the rebound as well with an exciting list, but they are decimated by injuries at the moment, Stevo.
I didn't know that. I didn't do my research,
Oh,
and it's too late to change. So, so you tell me after I've given the tip, you tell me they've got no players.
Sneaky bastard. Yeah. So Michael Walters, the biggest out there. I think he was his hammy, but then they've just got a lot of keys out. I think Hamling and Pearce. There's a bunch of guys. Sean Darcy could come back for Lloyd Meek in the ruck, but I mean that's almost like for like. But otherwise, yeah, I think I just think that GWS midfield that you love, right? You think they're still very, very good.
Oh, their best 4 or 5 midfielders. It'd be the best 4 or 5 midfielders any team. They've got a great midfield.
Yeah, but I mean, home ground advantage is a thing. It's a real thing, especially in Perth at Optus. So yeah, let's see how it goes. I've got GWS, you've got Dockers, and that'll be the game that splits us. Let's hope we get some of those other tips right.
Yeah, it'd be exciting. Last game of the round, we'll find out who wins the weekly tip-off between two of us.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Stevo, is there anything else that you want to add at this point before we sign off?
No, just looking forward to some footy at the SCG with people in the stands. It's going to be fantastic. I won't be there. I'll be watching on the video stream at I think it's on at 3 a.m. or something here. But either I'll be staying up late or getting up early. One of the two.
Awesome, mate. We're all looking forward to it. It should be a good day. Hopefully, we all go well and everyone's comes out of the game safe, and hopefully we have a W at the end of it. But all right, well, that brings us to the end of this episode 3. Thank you very much for listening in. We look forward to you joining us again next time. Until then, up the Bloods and Carnew Swannies.